Getting started with Windows Virtual Desktop, guys. To understand what Windows Virtual Desktop is all about, I would want to say that it is something which is making your remote working easy. In the kind of situation that we are today, the kind of environment we are in today, apart from the COVID 19 situation, also, remote working today is the need of the hour. When I say the need of the hour, I am talking about having all the possible flexibilities to leverage my users from using all of their things, all of their devices, all of their applications, and all of their resources from where they are. Remote working today is the most critical aspect that we might want in any enterprise. And moreover, I would say when we talk about remote working, it should actually consider all the fundamentals with regards to accessibility for my application, accessibility to my data, for every single resource that I would want to access in my corporate environment is the same what I should get over my home environment. Now, when we actually talk about having all of this from where I am, maybe let's say if I'm talking about accessing all the resources from my home, for all different types of employees, for all different types of workloads that I would want to use over it, it might not be possible that I have the enough resources. It might not be possible that I might have the sufficient hardware or applications or even the operating system to have those things in place. For example, a designer might not have that high level of graphics and those high level of hardware or application licenses available at home if they want to do some kind of a designing or some really heavy task with regards to animation and stuff. Office 365, Microsoft 365 have actually leveraged today all the users to have the facility of working from home. Applications, security, compliance, there is a lot that can be there. But while there is so much of it, we also would want to give the user altogether the end-to-end facility that to access those applications under security and compliance with a proper workstation in place is something that I will want that proper workstation to be there in place. This workstation is not something which I can expect my user to have it, or probably the company will deliver everything physically to every end user. That is where Windows Virtual Desktop comes into the picture. Things that we used to do till date in an RDS environment, in a DS web environment, wherein I'm accessing desktops and applications remotely, things that we used to do using my RDS connection broker or having those typical on-prem VDI environments, all of that has now been scaled up to the cloud. All of that is now available in the cloud in Azure in the name of Windows Virtual Desktop. So to explain you in a very simple layman's language, Windows Virtual Desktop is the cloud version of your RDS services because in the backend it works on the same architecture. It is your TS web services which used to offer applications and session host services like VDIs, virtual desktops, and virtual session hosts to the users to work. But when we talk about Windows Virtual Desktop, definitely because it is a cloud version, you have n number of options to scale up. You have n number of features to explore. You have things way too simplified because you don't have to go in the back end and design the infrastructure and stuff. It is easy to implement. It is easy to use. Very less administrative overheads, but still giving features way too beyond what an on-premise infrastructure used to give. So when I talk about again WVD, here I am actually focusing on the fundamental of working remotely. Like in today's date, I would say that if every organization that we talk about is trying to make remote working available for all the users, It is just on the basis of the IT infrastructure, scalability of the IT infrastructure, and making sure that users are not compromising on the business activities and it is being carried out smoothly. In today's date, remote working will not only cover, like let's say for example, just having a VPN connection from my laptop and just accessing every resource. My infrastructure might not be designed to give a VPN access to each and every user. It might be for partial users. So as far as we talk about remote working over here, we are all talking about irrespective of any organization from any business vertical. And at the same time, we are also talking over here about enabling these services for the end customer. When I want to enable these kind of services, when I want to enable my users to start doing work from home, remote activities in a modern environment, there might be multiple reasons that we might have to consider with regards to this kind of a remote environment. When I say multiple reasons to leverage your organization to a remote environment, you will have to first categorize your business. Let's say, for example, are you from a security or from a financial background? Is the organization's nature of business demanding highly uh, implemented security for uh, all the information that is being shared within the organization? I mean, that can happen in case of a financial or organization. It can happen in case of maybe say a healthcare or government organization, a banking sector. There can be many such reasons. Also, there might be a requirement depending upon the kind of people who are working inside the organization. When I say kind of people working inside the organization, what I mean over here is today the kind of employees who work in the environment are not limited to full time employees. I might have contractors, I might have auditors, I might have people who are just engaged for some specific project. In a situation where I can say temporary employees like this, I don't expect to every now and then go and associate or dedicate an asset to them. What I would want is simply giving them the accessibility on a particular resource. Once they are gone, the resource can be utilized by some other employee, or it can simply be removed from my environment. It can also be for people who are at some really senior designation and always demanding work from home, or having the flexibility to just get their own device, get it under compliance, start using it, get the access to all the features, yet stay completely secure on what they are actually going to do on that device. And lastly, it might be for some specialized workloads. Like as I gave you an example, for a graphic designer, I might require a desktop with high GPU. For somebody who is going to do some kind of a development and stuff, depending upon the application on which the development is happening, I might require a resource which has an extensive memory. For some database employee, I might require which has got an extensive storage. So I need to look into what kind of an environment are my users working into, and what all is going to be their dedicated requirement to work on a particular desktop. So when I consider the nature of business, the types of employees, the types of workforce, and the type of work that they might do, I will bring all these reasons together to define the kind of virtualization scenario that I would want to give these users. To satisfy all these requirements is where Windows Virtual Desktop comes into the picture. What actually Windows Virtual Desktop does is, it is something which is going to deliver Windows 10 Enterprise in multiple sessions. Now, when I say Windows 10 Enterprise in multiple sessions, till date, you have Windows 10 based RDPs happening only on one single user. What I mean is, if you are working on your Windows 10 desktop and I take an RDP of your system, in that case, you will be signed out. We have a multi session RDP experience, of course, but that is on the server front. For the first time ever, Windows Virtual Desktop is introducing Windows 10 with multiple sessions. So it is a server level functionality that you will get on a client operating system. Plus, it is something which enables optimization for Office 365 Professional Plus, meaning if at all you are using Windows 10 multi-session, you will have your Office 365 Professional Plus also, which can be used in multiple sessions over the same node. So practically speaking, you can in short say over here that a Windows Virtual Desktop is going to have a distinguished identity of Windows 10 and the Office applications that would be served to your end users. It has got seamless migration opportunities from your on-premise RDS environment, like you have hardly some level of configurations to be done and you have the opportunity to move from RDS to Windows Virtual Desktop. And lastly, deployment and scaling goes in minutes. Today I have 50 users. I'm using an X level of environment with an X servers in the backend with an X Windows 10 of Windows 10 desktops running. If I want to scale it from 50 to 100, it goes in minutes, and from 100 to 90 or 100 to 80 or 100 to 20 also goes in minutes. So over here, advantages are that you have an altogether different level of functionality for Windows 10 and your Office Professional Plus. Also, the scalability is really good if you want to upscale or downscale your environment. And at the same time, moving from your native RDS environment to a Windows Virtual Desktop is much more simpler. This is exactly what I was talking about. So in your Windows server, you have something called as an RD session host, the typical RDS services for which we procure CALs and it is delivered to the customer. For Windows Server Session Host, as for Windows Server RD Session Host, you have multiple advantages like scalable multi-session Windows environment. You have a server operating system to manage those multiple sessions. You have Office Perpetual or an Office Professional Plus. This is a specific license that you procure for giving Windows and Office remotely. And you use something called as a LTSC release of Windows 10, which is not very frequently going to be updated. Whereas when we talk about the Windows 10 Enterprise that we use, we have a single session Windows experience. Like if I sign in on your machine, you will be signed out. You have Win32 and universal Windows platform based applications which are going to be offered from the business store. You have Office 365 Professional Plus, and you have semi-annual channel, means your Windows based updates are going to be more frequent as compared to what you might get on your server front. And now what you have is a Windows 10 multi-session, meaning this multi-session environment is going to be as scalable as your server environment, still giving the users of the experience of Windows 10, but not on a single session, on multiple sessions, supporting all the universal apps that needs to be installed for the user, supporting Office 365 Professional Plus, and at the same time maintaining the update cycle the way it was previously in your Windows 10. So Windows 10 MS is something which is an intermediate version between your servers and the client operating system, and this can be used to facilitate a Windows Virtual Desktop to the end users. The model of Citrix working with Windows Virtual Desktop was already released and was already into the practice since quite some time now. And now that WVD has got its independent identity of serving desktops and applications, the functionality is way too smoother than what an integration with Citrix was. No, nevertheless, this doesn't mean that Microsoft has stopped any kind of an integration or support that you can have with Citrix. You can still have your Windows virtual desktops running with Citrix. You can still have Windows virtual desktops collaborated with VMware Horizon, and you can also offer every different type of an application, may that be an on-premise application, may that be a publicly available application, anything using Windows Virtual Desktop to the end user. So WVD in short is going to virtualize the experience of the user and not compromise over it. The user will take an RDP to use it, but he will never get the feeling of working over a limited environment. The options, the applications, the data accessibility, and everything is going to remain as smooth as it remains on a single desktop. Why do we say that Windows Virtual Desktop is something which can be implemented in the most seamless manner in today's date? It is because WVD comes on a complete Microsoft cloud ecosystem. When I say a complete Microsoft cloud ecosystem, what I mean over here is you will have Microsoft 365 integration to secure the accessibility of the user using role based access control to define permissions, providing multi-factor authentication to make the environment more secure, and conditional access to define under what situation or under what conditions is the user supposed to access the VDI, or under what circumstances is his access supposed to be revoked while using the VDI. So this is a level of security that you will implement on the Windows Virtual Desktop. Secondly, when you are using WVD in the backend, it is completely the Microsoft Azure platform, which has got more than 90 compliance settings, compliance offerings that you can put in place, like the security, the identity protection, the privileged identity and access management, and a lot more. Plus, it has 3,500 plus global cybersecurity experts working to make sure that WVD environment is hardened by every passing day, giving the customer a complete assurance, a level of satisfaction that none of their data is going to be compromised or breached. 6.5 trillion global signals daily. This is the count that we are, you can say, aggregating by every passing day on the users who are trying to explore or use the Windows Virtual Desktop. And Microsoft is investing huge every year. Huge. When I say huge, the amount is more than any other IT solution provider in today's industry. And lastly, once you implement Azure and M365, you offer all of these solutions to your end user using WVD. And in WVD, you will be actually integrating your entire environment with the only powerful solution of Azure, that is, identity solution of Azure, that is Azure Active Directory, to make sure that not even a bit of the access is lenient. Windows Virtual Desktop was initially announced in September 2018, where they promised that it would be available easily to the end customers by the second half of 2019. In March 2019, the fundamentals of Windows Virtual Desktop were introduced and the necessary optimizations were offered. And then in July 2019, the actual infrastructure was started. The actual infrastructure was put in place to have the WVD environment running. September 2019, the availability was kept open, the GA version of Windows Virtual Desktop, and by every passing day you have new tools and new applications coming up that can integrate with WVD, and today it is one of the finest and the most stable solutions that can be offered for remote working. The current availability that we are seeing over here is across a couple of regions. When I say couple of regions, this is where you have dedicated data centers and dedicated hardware availability for them. And this also is something which is a little you can say an information which Microsoft has revealed so far, but the actual number of data centers today that are offering, the physical regions that are offering, has crossed nearly 15 or 16 diversified locations across the globe, making sure that every region can leverage, every region can start using Windows Virtual Desktop. Currently, the resources are available in US, Europe, Japan, even some parts of Middle East. And on the roadmap are Brazil, Asia Pacific, India, and Australia. Again, in availability, there are some parts, some additional parts even of UK where WVD is available. Now, what exactly came through with Windows Virtual Desktop? Like, customers have always been worried about the kind of cost that we incur on RDS. So, the cost that I incur on RDS is something which is going to be a major concern. Plus, when I will actually start offering these kind of desktops to the users to use from home, the security is going to be a even higher concern. Keeping all of this in mind, security has been enhanced using Microsoft 365, putting all the components in place, and Azure backed by it, which is considered in today's date the number one for the kind of compliance offerings that Azure is able to give across any other cloud solutions provider, against any other cloud solutions provider. At the same time, every single aspect of using this particular environment was evaluated, like the kind of users, the kind of hardware, the kind of backend that I might have to provide, the kind of workforce that might be using it. And then lastly, the focus was on cost. And today, implementing WVD is considered to be one of the seamless and the most cheapest solutions to access highest possible workloads for end users over any cloud platform. The most exciting part over here is that there are a lot of customers who are already eligible to start using WVD without procuring any additional licenses. Customers who have a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 license in education sector, I'm talking about A3 and A5, who have Microsoft 365 student use benefits, F1, Microsoft 365 business, and Windows 10 VDA per user. All of these organizations or customers already have the benefit of start of using WVD without waiting for any other or without incurring any additional cost on the license procurement. On the server front, organizations who already have RDS CAL licenses that are purchased for on-premise and the licenses are still active for those users are the ones who can use WVD in the environment. Windows Virtual Desktop supports Windows 10 Enterprise and at the same time even Linux. And now what new is coming up is a Windows Virtual Desktop with Linux SDK in place for a broader ecosystem. When I say, it means for offering the services, for offering more and more flexibilities, for offering more level of customizations on the Linux operating system as well. So WVD is not only limited to Windows 10, it is also extending to WVD with Linux. In the backend, WVD is so scalable that each time the user is trying to utilize a particular workload, and if at all my WVD does not have room for those workloads to run, it instantly starts provisioning hardware, may that be in terms of storage, may that be in terms of memory or CPU, and makes sure that users' experience is not compromised at any cost. New capabilities that Windows Virtual Desktop is coming up with by every passing day is that it supports Linux thin clients. It has got a very easy administrative experience. It integrates in today's date also with your on-prem native and Active Directory domain controllers, and also supports Azure file storage to make sure that you're granting permissions to the user as per your requirement. Deep integration with Microsoft 365. Like, I can have my Windows virtual desktop based machines completely controlled and managed using my Intune security and compliance as well. Microsoft Teams is something that you can use on the Windows virtual desktop pretty much seamlessly. To your surprise, once you start using your WVD, you can even redirect that virtual session to your physical hardware to start using your camera in terms of doing a video conferencing on Teams over WVD. When you actually start using WVD, sorry, when you actually start using WVD, there is very little that comes under your control, and that is just the subscription that you're using, the applications, and the client operating systems. Apart from that, the web access, the connection brokers, the high availability, the management, the load shedding, the monitoring, the gateways, terminating external and internal traffic, managing the backend hardware, managing the backend storage, network, etc. Whatever it is, the memory utilizations, all of this is completely taken care of by Microsoft itself. So what you manage is your client operating system and your server offering for the remote applications. Well, as I keep saying that Windows Virtual Desktop is something which can be initialized very easily, probably the list of prerequisites might say that, okay, it is not that easy. You need Active Directory services, you need virtual machines with Active Directory configured, and a VPN connection with your on-premise in order to make sure that your on-premise applications can be redirected to the end users using the virtual desktop session. We have till date always been working with something called as roaming profiles. So whatever the user is doing on his desktop doesn't get saved locally, guys. It is saved in the backend to a particular path which is considered to be the roaming profile. Exactly the same logic can be used over here in WVD. The only thing is, instead of calling them roaming profiles, you call them as FS logics profiles, meaning you save these particular profiles in an Azure file storage, which is secured with Azure ADDS. And when the user comes to access it, enters the relevant username and password, and the profile is loaded from the back, making it easier for you to understand that, okay, profiles is never going to remain a challenge even if the user's desktop session keeps switching. At the same time, you will have a lot of permissions that will be required. So you need to be a subscription admin. You need to have adequate rights on the subscription on your Azure Active Directory and as well on your Azure tenant. This is a short walkthrough of how you deploy Windows Virtual Desktop as a component in your environment. So, not to go too much into the technical part of it, just a heads up for this. You will create a collection of virtual machines, may that be new or may that be existing. You will use your that particular environment to spin up a complete desktop for the users. And lastly, you will use HTML5 client to connect to those desktops. You will also deploy remote applications like, for example, you will publish Word, Excel, PowerPoint, the entire Office 365 suite using remote app to a second user. When I say second user, since I'm talking over here about multi-session, it might not always be, I mean, it is definitely not going to be necessary always that it's my user ID that logs in. So you'll use the Windows client RDP component to connect to the remote application, making it very much simple the way you used to connect in your on-premise. And lastly, you should be very well aware of how FS Logics manage your user profiles with the Azure file share. The most exciting part that comes into the picture, guys, over here is the best virtualized Windows experience ever across the IT industry is what WVD provides. When we talk about WVD, when we say that the solution is very cheap, we go to the end customer, we try promoting all of it, we still might land up where the customer will ask us a question saying that, okay, it's ultimately a cloud based session. How can you assure me that I'm going to get the best of visibility to the things that I'm doing? Probably it might give me glitches, it might give me a lag, a delay while I'm accessing all of it. Answer is no, because Windows experience on WVD is the best from any operating system, any hardware, any device, from any location with any kind of a network connectivity. Of course, you need the basic network connectivity. You can't expect that, okay, if I have a 2G connection, will my Windows virtual desktop run fine? Probably, yeah, you might load the page today and you might get the response tomorrow. So here we are talking about at least a basic decent connectivity that you might have. You can access it on your client operating systems. You can access it on HTML5. You can access it on Androids, macOS, and iOS. You can also access it over thin clients. That is Windows 10 IoT Enterprise and Linux or Ubuntu that is deployed on thin clients. Now the question over here is, what is the kind of improvisation that I'm talking about over here? Hell lot of it. In terms of the user experience, in terms of security and authentication, in terms of accessibility under different languages, in terms of the plugins, in terms of automatic screen adjustments, and a lot more. Here, what I mean is auto adjustment of your resolution. So probably if you're using the desktop like this is a full desktop view, but probably you try to resize it. The window will fit automatically to that new size. You again try resizing it, the size will increase. You try to probably cascade the windows. In that case, the Windows resolution will be adjusted accordingly. This is an automatic feature that comes with WVD. You might wonder, using WVD, can I connect to multiple monitors? Can I have duplication? Can I have WVD using my physical hardware to do this? Answer is yes. It was mentioned coming soon in the previous slide, but the preview versions are already out, and very soon this is going to be a general availability feature. Accessibility over Teams is excellent. You don't need an end-to-end connectivity or end-to-end device-based configuration to happen. You can simply have Microsoft Teams running in the cloud. You can have two WVD sessions that are trying to access Microsoft Teams. And while doing so, you will get exactly the same experience that you might get in your on-premise, something like this. This is the kind of experience that you can have on Microsoft Teams in spite of not having it installed locally on your device. So it's going to be running from a Windows Virtual Desktop session that is hosted in the cloud, Teams that is integrated through Microsoft 365, and still giving you the seamless most experience without a lag or a delay. To administer WVD, to your surprise, you can do it from the different types of apps that WVD has to offer across Windows, from your Azure portal, from mobile device application stores, to all sorts of different versions of operating systems that can be used to manage it. Things when they come to WVD are just starting to improvise. So when I say starting to improvise, here we are talking about a remote display driver. So many a times there is again a question that what if I'm using a WVD session, how seamless is going to be my video session, or how seamless is going to be my experience on accessing that desktop. If I take you back in 2018 when WVD was just released, the experience was something that you see to your left, and the experience that you have now is something that you will see to your right. Reason being, if you can see over here on the left, the first option, frames per second, that it can deliver is not exceeding 12, whereas over here it's nearly three times, it's nearly 38, making the accessibility and the user experience as seamless as it can. And this can be in terms of a slow access, or it can even be in terms of a fast moving video that you might access on a Windows virtual desktop. Something like this. Coming to an end user experience where I might wish to have a video playback happen on my virtual desktop. If you can see the screen, I'm typically talking over here about the Windows Media Player in the task manager that you are seeing utilizing nearly 33% of the CPU available on my base hardware, yet delivering a horrible performance. This is something that we are talking about in 2018 September, which has continuously been optimized, harnessed to make sure that the delivery is best to its experience. Now, what you have in terms of accessing these resources is multimedia playback, but with an enhanced mode. When I say enhanced mode, here your CPU utilization directly drops from 30% to as low as 2%, and still the experience of accessing these kind of videos will be something like this. Improved frames per second, extremely low utilization of the CPU, integration with the best possible hardware, still giving you the most seamless access on your virtual desktop altogether. So here, the CPU utilization that you see, guys, is something which is absolutely acceptable for me. Considering all these aspects, in today's date, when people are 99% of them, I must say, are working from home, Windows Virtual Desktop is the new normal, is the new deliverable that you might be wanting to focus on, have looking at the kind of seamless potential it has for a customer of any segment. You can probably start pitching Windows Virtual Desktop by going to the customers, asking what kind of users they have, what kind of applications do they access, and is there any specific reason of following the method that they are actually using right now, or are they ready to adapt to a new method of accessing these resources altogether? What conditions are required to access the corporate resource for them? Like, do they have the actual security and compliance in place? Are they actually having that particular hardened environment configured in a manner that none of your data is being leaked out? What controls are required for them depending upon their nature of business? These three questions should be enough to answer how Windows Virtual Desktop can satisfy them as an end customer. So this was a quick walkthrough, guys, a short summary on Windows Virtual Desktop from my end. This is actually the time when you should start focusing on WVD to be the highest selling SKU for your this particular quarter of business, and make sure that you get the most out of it. This typically brings us to an end of the overview on Windows Virtual Desktop from my end. Let us have some questions answered if you guys have any. Junaid, you are not clearly audible. Sorry.
Thank you. Am I audible now?